Congratulations! You've just become the owner-operator of Vatican City. I know, it looks like the postcard. Marble floors, Swiss guards in striped pajamas, Michelangelo on the ceiling. But here's what you've actually inherited. A 110-acre estate so old that practically every roof, wall, and fresco paintings done directly on wet plaster. In it is fighting a slow-motion war against gravity and humidity. Nobody is born here. There are no factories, no exports, and virtually no tax-paying citizens. And this tiny city still has to pay for a national government, a diplomatic corps, and the security of the Pope. The one thing it does have in staggering quantities is maintenance bills. Just inside the museums you now own, there are roughly 30,000 lights burning all day. You're running climate control round the clock to stop canvases from the 1500s from warping in the Roman heat. Every morning brings a new small emergency. A medieval roof leaking, a column by the famous artist Bernini developing a very thin crack. You haven't bought a calm spiritual estate. You've bought a project to keep the culture alive forever with a cash flow problem. And it burns money faster than the sweet-smelling smoke burned in churches. So, before you spend a single euro, let's look at what the real operators are doing to keep this place standing today. And the answer is one single, physical, human pipeline. Walk to the Leonine walls at dawn and you'll see it. A queue that curls around the block before the doors even open. Every person in that line pays roughly 17 to 20 euros to get inside. Over 6 million people shuffle through these turnstiles, the spinning entrance gates, each year. That's hundreds of millions of euros annually. That one stream of ticket revenue is what the Vatican runs on. It pays the salaries of the Pope and his staff. That's what papal means. It funds diplomatic missions. It restores ceilings. The museum has perfected efficient crowd movement with a precision that would make a theme park jealous because every slow second is lost money. The visitors aren't here for a gift shop. They're here for 15 minutes under one Renaissance ceiling, a finite thing that cannot be replicated anywhere else on Earth, and they've crossed oceans to see it. The queue is the country's most important national infrastructure. The Sistine Chapel is its natural resource, mined one ticket at a time. Now, with 100 million euros a year walking through the door, you'd think the books would be solid. Turns out, they regularly lose a lot of money, because the cost of preserving literally priceless things is, in practice, literally unlimited. Start with the art. Every canvas by the painter Caravaggio, every ancient map in the gallery sits in a room where the temperature and moisture in the air must never drift outside a tiny safe band. One brutal Roman August, and the wrong sudden increase in humidity can warp a painting worth more than your entire annual budget to fix. Those 30,000 lights, the silent army of dehumidifiers, machines that pull water from the air, and sensors, plus constant repairs on ancient buildings. All that museum revenue vanishes into the fight against time. Maintaining a masterpiece isn't a one-time repair. It's a permanent subscription you can never cancel. And here's the part they don't put on the ticket. Even that subscription isn't enough. The big restorations, the multi-year, scaffold the whole chapel kind, where they build temporary metal platforms to reach the ceiling, are far too expensive to be paid for by daily ticket sales alone. So the Vatican runs a quiet second pipeline called the Patrons of the Arts in the Vatican Museums. It's essentially an adoption program for Renaissance masterpieces. A wealthy donor, a foundation, even a corporation steps forward to pay for the restoration of a specific fresco, a statue, or an entire hall. In return, they get naming rights, private after-hours tours, and an elegant little plaque next to the work. The Knights of Columbus, a Catholic men's service organization, famously funded the recent cleaning of the Pauline Chapel's frescoes. Other patrons have funded the Raphael rooms. The deal is simple. You pay for the scaffolding, the people who restore the art, the chemical analysis, and the Vatican gives you a permanent VIP backstage pass to the world's most exclusive art collection. It's a high-end pledge drive that turns the masterpiece's own stories and history into a fundraising tool. Without it, some of these rooms would simply stay behind closed doors, quietly falling apart. The ticket turnstile keeps the place running. The patrons of the arts keep the frescoes from turning to dust. And then there's the other pool of money, the one you don't control. Once a year, the global Catholic Church takes up a special collection called Peter's Pence, a kind of ancient worldwide crowdfunding model meant for the Pope's charitable works. In theory, it's a beautiful thing. Offerings from every parish on earth, bundled and sent to Rome. In reality, it shows the mood of Catholics around the world. When a major scandal erupts anywhere, from Boston to Lyon to Sydney, the collection plate comes back noticeably light. The museum queue generates a surplus, and then a single bad news cycle can nearly erase it. Your national budget doesn't just fear a humid summer, it fears a breaking news alert. Now, here's the thing about that museum queue. The The money from the turnstile isn't just vulnerable to a virus or heat wave, it's vulnerable to a headline. When a major abuse scandal breaks, the line around the Leonine walls loses its rhythm. In 2018, after the detailed government report from Pennsylvania detailed thousands of cases of clergy sexual abuse, U.S. Catholic tour operators reported a sharp drop in planned Vatican pilgrimages. Within the following 12 months, the Vatican museums recorded a dip in North American visitors. Not a cliff, but enough to erase the extra money they had saved for a full 3-month period. The queue is, in a strange way, a global conscience meter. When faith weakens, people stop coming. So while the museum ticket is the Vatican's most reliable daily earner, it turns out that reliability is tied to a moral asset the Vatican doesn't fully control. So the Vatican relies on a museum queue and it nervously watches the collection basket. Surely you're thinking, as an independent country, it has a few other tricks. It does. They're charming. They just don't pay the bills. Get this, the Vatican makes its own euro coins, instantly worth more to collectors than the amount printed on the coin. It prints its own postage stamps, beautiful little items that sell as pure profit items for collectors. Inside the walls, a tiny tax-free supermarket serves the few hundred employees. There's even a petrol station. Add up all the profit from the stamps, the coins, and the grocery store combined, and the total is a tiny amount compared to what the museum queue brings in. It's completely invisible against the gap between what they earn and what they spend on maintenance. Those enterprises exist to prove it's a country, but they don't pay for anything. Totally useless for keeping the main church lit. A basilica is a large, important church. But behind that image of selling old-fashioned souvenirs, the Vatican actually controls a huge property portfolio. By some estimates, it's the largest non-public landowner in Rome. We're talking thousands of apartments, grand historic buildings, commercial spaces, many gifted by noble families hundreds of years ago. The rental income from these properties regularly rivals what the museum brings in. The whole operation is managed by APSA, the Vatican's asset administration body, but a 2014 leak exposed a confusing system of favors. Many apartments were rented at a fraction of market price to friends in the Vatican's governing body, sometimes for as little as a few €100 a month in the heart of Rome. The Vatican was effectively covering the cost of a private network while losing rental income that could have paid for a dozen restoration teams. The portfolio has been involved in at least 3 major scandals in the past decade, including an ongoing investigation into financial crimes that briefly blocked access to tens of millions of euros in 2020. So there is a financial cushion, but it's a cushion with holes poked through it by its own management. And yet, none of these sources of income, the tickets, the donors, the real estate, would exist without one massive money-losing machine the Vatican has been quietly funding for nearly a century. Like its global media operation. Behind every papal tweet, every live-streamed mass, every sermon, translated into dozens of languages, sits a vast communications operation. Vatican Radio alone has been broadcasting since 1931 from an antenna farm on Vatican-owned land outside Rome, now sending content across dozens of languages via satellite and digital platforms. Then there's the daily newspaper L'Osservatore Romano, the news site Vatican News, available in many languages, and a production team that films and distributes every major papal event. All told, this operation costs tens of millions of euros a year to run, and it generates almost no direct revenue. No subscription model, no ad sales of any scale. It's a pure loss leader, a service that loses money on purpose to attract people. But here's the strange magic. This money pit is the very thing that keeps the global brand alive. The Pope's Wednesday audience is watched by millions because Vatican Radio and its digital channels send it everywhere. That visibility, the reputation, the moral presence, the constant reminder that this tiny city exists, is what fills the queue at the Leonine walls each morning. You can't have the ticket revenue without the broadcast bill. The media machine is the museum's marketing department, and the turnstile is its only funder. If you shut down the radio station to save money, you might just shut down the queue. And even with that hidden real estate, the one crack that should keep you up at night hasn't changed. Everything, papal salaries, light bulbs, the humidity sensor next to the Raphael, everything depends on a single assumption, that the steady flow of global tourists will never stop. A pandemic, a long air travel shutdown, even a long enough Italian heat wave that keeps cruisers on their ships, and the queue stops. The moment the Sistine Chapel stops converting visitors into euros, it flips instantly from a cash engine into an endless money drain that still needs climate control. The Vatican's biggest financial weakness is a perfectly ordinary human line around a block. A border closure could shut it down overnight. All right, your turn. You've seen everything the real operators already do to squeeze this place, and you're not going to be less. First, tiered viewing spots inside the Sistine Chapel. The standard ticket gets you in the room, but a Sistine Squint extra charge lets you stand 3 feet closer to the center of the ceiling, where the perspective is supposedly perfect. Add a silent auction slot for the single best viewing spot, the exact point directly under God's finger, and watch rival bidders fund an entire scaffolding restoration every Tuesday. Second, dynamic pricing linked to the religious calendar. A basic algorithm tracks global religious sentiment. Papal popularity index spikes, ticket price increases slightly. A cardinal sneezes during a televised mass, flash sale to fill the hall. You're not overcharging pilgrims. You're running the world's first market for betting on holiness. Third, the papal balcony subscription. 3 tiers: bronze, silver, and gold, where subscribers get the balcony to themselves for 15 minutes. Give a speech. Propose to the person you're going to marry. Announce your business's first investment while overlooking a crowd of actual faithful in St. Peter's Square. For the top tier, a recorded blessing plays from hidden speakers. It's not the Pope's voice, but the sound is good enough. The unsettling part? After everything we've just walked through, none of this sounds that far from where reality already lives. The smallest country on Earth runs on a ticket turnstile, and the deficit in its books is just the monthly invoice for trying to freeze a Renaissance miracle in place while the planet slowly melts around it. So keep those lines moving, because the minute the queue slows down, even Michelangelo can't make your finances work. Good luck.